You have been living inside a story that was written before you were old enough to question it. Who told you that you were ordinary? Who decided your ceiling? Name them. Because that voice in your head, the one that lists all the reasons you cannot, that is not wisdom. That is the cage speaking. The Gnostics called it the demiurge, the false architect, the construct that built walls from the inside out, so convincingly that the prisoner mistakes the prison for themselves. Not a demon outside you, a pattern within you, a voice that sounds like your own. And here is the most dangerous thing about the demiurge's cage. It does not need iron bars. It only needs your belief. The moment you accept the story it hands you about who you are, what you're worth, how far you can go, the walls appear. Not around you, in you. John 8:32. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. This is not a comfort verse. It is a diagnosis. It implies you have been living in something other than truth. It implies the freedom you are seeking is not ahead of you somewhere in the future. It is already available to anyone willing to see through the false architecture that has been built around them. Willing to see through, not fight, not destroy, see through. Because you cannot break what you cannot name, and you cannot name what you refuse to look at directly. Napoleon Hill mapped this territory in Think and Grow Rich. He called it the 6 ghosts of fear. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of death. Read that list carefully. These are not random anxieties. These are the demiurge's instruments, the tools the false architect uses to keep the divine spark confused, small, and occupied with limitation instead of creation. Hill said the mastermind neutralizes these fears not by courage alone, but by understanding their origin. You cannot defeat what you worship, and most people worship their fears without knowing it. They organize their entire lives around the avoidance of what the demiurge has told them to dread. Here is the Gnostic warrior's first move. Name the cage. Not abstractly, specifically. What story about yourself have you been carrying since before you could challenge it? What ceiling have you accepted as a natural fact of your life that is in truth just to believe someone handed you and you never questioned? Ordinary, too much, not enough, lucky to have what you have, not the kind of person who, people like us don't. I am free of every story that was written for me before I knew how to write my own. I dissolve the false architect, every voice, every ceiling, every inherited limitation. I am not the constructed self. I am the original. I am the divine spark before the cage. I choose truth over comfort, even when the truth requires me to see the bars I built. The prison has no walls I cannot dissolve the moment I stop believing in them. Feel that, not as poetry, as engineering. The cage is not made of circumstance. It is made of agreement. The moment you withdraw agreement, the moment you refuse to keep telling the story that keeps you small, the architecture begins to crack. Like light flooding through the center of a wall that can no longer hold.
The Gnostic texts, suppressed for centuries because they were too dangerous to power built on obedience, said this: the demiurge cannot create light. It can only rearrange what already exists into cages. Everything the false architect uses against you is borrowed material. Your own energy turned against itself. Fear borrowed from love's other side. Doubt borrowed from discernment. Self-destruction borrowed from the drive to transform. The demiurge builds nothing. it only inverts. Which means everything being used to keep you small is made of the same substance as the power you are trying to claim. There is nothing to defeat. There is only something to reclaim. Here is where this becomes tactical. Hill's mastermind principle states that the moment two or more minds coordinate in a spirit of harmony toward a definite purpose, a third intelligence emerges, one that transcends the individual. The ancients knew this too. The Gnostic mystery schools were not just philosophy. They were cooperative systems for dismantling the false self in community, under accountability, with frequency as the medium. 963 Hertz. What you are hearing beneath this teaching was identified by researchers as the frequency associated with the pineal gland activation, the seat of inner sight, the perception faculty that sees through constructed reality to the underlying truth. The demiurge cannot operate in the presence of this frequency, not because the sound destroys it, because the awareness it opens dissolves the fog the false architect requires. Your challenge today: one story, one inherited ceiling, one voice you have been treating as wisdom that is, upon examination, just an old agreement you never consciously made. Write it down, even one sentence. I have been telling myself that, and then cross it out. Not dramatically, deliberately. You are not erasing a memory. You are withdrawing consent to a belief that has been operating in your name without your permission. Declaration: I am the original self, not the constructed one. I see through every false architecture built around my identity. I reclaim every energy the false architect borrowed to build my cage. I am aligned with truth at 963 Hertz, the frequency the demiurge cannot reach. I choose the path back to self, not someday, right now, in this moment. The Gnostic warrior does not seek freedom in the future. The warrior sees the cage as it is, made of belief, not stone, and withdraws consent. That withdrawal is the act of liberation. Not dramatic, not loud, quiet, fierce, final. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. That story was assigned to you by the false architect, and today you give it back. The path back to self is not long. It begins with seeing clearly. And right now, in this frequency, in this teaching, in this moment, you are seeing clearly. Leave something in the comments today. One ceiling you just named, one story you just crossed out. Your active naming gives the next warrior permission to name theirs. Subscribe. We go deeper every day at the Gnostic Warrior. Join the community at https://school.com/Third Eye Warriors. Support the mission at https://ourfamilies.pplx.app/donate. Cash App at cashapp.app/ourfamilies321. Ancient wisdom, inner fire, the path back to self.